Hey, what's up, guys? It's the Fashion Guy back at it with another podcast. And today I want to talk about something very interesting that has been in my mind for a couple of weeks now. And have thought about talking about this topic as I was building up to this podcast. Is about making sure you're ready for a rainy day, one of my biggest influences, Gary Vaynerchuk, and you will probably hear a lot about him throughout my podcast. In one of his vlogs, he started talking about how a lot of us, especially the millennial generation, go about our lives thinking that it's always going to be the same and that we're never going to have problems and that we're always going to have money available. And he says that we're not really prepared and we never prepare ourselves for anything bad that can happen. I'm sorry. And I think it's very important to kind of note that because many of us in general, not just the millennial generation, as much as they like to bash it, but in general, a lot of people live their lives the day to day. They're not worrying about what might go wrong or if something might go wrong, and not to blame them. Sometimes it's difficult to think about all that, but um, it's smart to be ready, it's smart to be prepared, and smart to think about your decisions and how you're going about your life. And the way I tie this into like personal and professional development is that a lot of us out there might go this year or the following year, from earning minimum wage to maybe earning $30,000 a year or $40,000 a year, and Gary, one of his vlogs, talks about this. A lot of people are going to go this year from earning $60,000 to $100,000, and others are going to go from earning $30,000 to $50,000. Others are going to go from earning nothing to earning like $25,000 a year. And and what was usually happens is once we start having money come in, we just start spending it on things, things that we might not even need. Kind of like those memes that roll around during the tax refund season, where like there's a guy like walking a bird, what's it called, a bird, or like an ostrich or something like that, some kind of weird exotic animal. And it's kind of true. A lot of people, a lot of us, including myself, we start just getting money into our hands and we just start letting go of it. We start buying things we don't need. We don't think about saving. We don't think about investing. We think that we're gonna be fine and that nothing's ever gonna change. And that's one of the biggest mistakes we make, as humans, is thinking that just because we're okay today, that we'll be okay tomorrow. And just because things are the way they are today doesn't mean they're gonna be like that in a year, and which is good and bad, because just because you're not successful today, or just because you're not where you want to be today, that doesn't mean you're not gonna be somewhere the next year or the other years. Just because you're in a place today doesn't mean you're gonna be in the same place 5 years from today. And so it's a very a two-way street on that. But what I want to talk about with the rainy days is that I want to like share one of my personal stories, or how I learned about this and how I kind of came to realizing the importance of being prepared and just being mature about the way we spend money and how we save money and how we develop ourselves as people to always be employable, or always have an entrepreneurial spirit to just take action when needed and kind of make things happen. Um, this happened about like 3 years ago, and I was working for Forever 21, and I was working a full time position with benefits like health insurance, paid time off, all that good stuff. And everything was fine. I was helping out at the time. My mom was sick and she wasn't able to work, so part of what I was earning was going towards her way, to help her out and kind of just pick up that responsibility, that I felt I had as her son. So I mean, it was a rough time for me personally with my mother's illness, but I mean, I had the means to kind of make it happen right. Well, this happened around like it's around the middle of the year, during those times, like around the summer, we started hearing about within our company that it was going to be a restructure. And I kind of was a bit thrown off, but it didn't worry much because every time I took like in school, when I was in school and I took my human resources courses and stuff like that, my I remember when one of my instructors told me, he was a human resource manager for like a title firm back in Phoenix, and he said he once gave me like this sage wisdom, and he said anytime you hear about talk about a merger or an acquisition within your company, that's a good sign for you to start to move on, to look for another plan B, because there's a lot of things that happen. And he said, I, as a former human resource manager, know know about this, so I'm telling you, every time you hear that, just be careful. But since I didn't hear that, I heard restructure. I thought, well, it's just the way things have to change. There was kind of the beginning of where the retail industry was starting to get hit a little bit hard with all this technology and everything that was changing, this changing in consumer behaviors. So I didn't think much about it, you know. The funny thing is that they really didn't tell us much about it. That we just knew there was going to be a restructure. We didn't know specifics. We didn't know how things were going to play out, but we know it was coming right. As as the days got closer to the day of the restructure, which was scheduled to happen sometime about February of the next year, like around October, November, and December, we were like, okay, so what's gonna happen? Tell us, like like to upper management, right? And there would be no, you know what? It's just gonna be good things. It's gonna be good for the company. It's gonna be we're gonna restructure so everything plays out well for all of us. It's gonna be a good change, you know. And that's kind of I'm all like, I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. That's kind of strange, you know. It's kind of they were very secretive about it. They didn't say much. They didn't tell us how it was gonna be better or why it was going to be better, but we just knew they just told us that it was going to be better. So I just kind of went about my day. So the month of the restructure came, right, and we get a letter. Our store manager shares with us a letter, a pretty not a letter, kind of like a memo, and it said it was signed off by the CEO and all those top executives, and it said something around the lines of, in order for us to stay competitive in this growing environment, this very competitive, growing retail environment, we must take certain actions and assess certain situations in order to um, be able to maintain the company in the long run, and all that, just a lot of fancy words that I, as a student of business, was able to read between the lines, because it's kind of like it gave me a flashback to kind of like the human resource courses I took, and how they told us, like when we were in those sections of the lectures, were how to give bad news and how to communicate bad things to employees, like all these words and all this terminology. But the idea was pretty much that in order for the company to stay competitive, they were going to have to get rid of some positions and eliminate and have to merge other positions, and some full-time positions were going to be taken into part-time. And one of those positions that was taken into a part-time position was my position. So at the time I was a visual merchandiser. So what the company did is that in order to stay competitive, they eliminated my visual merchandising position company wide, and they merged the responsibilities of that position with another position, and that was that. And another thing I kind of learned within that moment is that I was really never involved in politics, or that I really am at this moment, but I want to say I wasn't really concerned about politics or who was running the country or what laws were going into place, because I kind of just lived my life. But that was the first time I kind of like, it struck me like it's important to pay attention to stuff like that, because it affects me. The company's change came about because of the Affordable Care Act, which went into full effect that month. So a lot of companies, not only the company I was employed at the time, a lot of other companies had to restructure their way of doing business in order to be in compliance with the law. So it was kind of the first time I kind of really had like a big eye opening, and I was kind of slapped in my face, and I was like, hey, you have to pay attention to the government as well, because it affects you. You don't just live your life, and it kind of plays a part in what your life is. Well, that being said, anyway, so I remember walking into the office of my store manager, and there was like kind of like a very eerie mood around the entire store. I have heard through the grapevine of other people like crying, and like people are just quitting on the spot. And I sit down, and she pretty much tells me some BS story, well, not story, like apology, this and that. And she pretty much told me, you know what, you have three options. The first option you have is to, quit, which is completely understandable, she said. The second option you have is to take a regular sales associate entry level position, part time. Okay. And the other option you have is to become a part-time lead of service. And I'm like, so no more full-time, right? It's like, no, unfortunately, no. And I'm like, okay, cool. So what does this lead of service position entail? What's it about? So the gist of it was pretty much I was a manager without any of the manager benefits and without any of the manager pay. So I was like, I see what's up. And that was like one of the major hits I had in my professional career when I all of a sudden, from one month to another, without warning, without notice, I was taken from full time to part time, which meant my earnings were cut in half, which affected everything I did. Specifically helping out my sick mother at the time that couldn't work. So it was kind of after that, it was a really tough year for me, having to work part time with more responsibilities and helping out a sick mom and, taking care of her financially as much as I could within my possibilities because I could barely make it. But I mean, I made it happen, and it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it built a lot of character and it built a lot of initiative and it built a lot of things that kind of led up to this podcast and just kind of wanting to branch out and help others. But the thing I learned is that just because everything is fine at a moment doesn't mean it's gonna be fine the next moment. And as people, as professionals, we have to always be prepared for when things don't go our way. For when shit hits the fan. We must be aware of what's going on around our world, what's happening at a macro level, what's happening at a micro level, so we can take better decisions. So if maybe I had been a little bit more prepared, a little bit more aware of things, I could have picked up on this kind of on this kind of structure that was gonna really screw me over, and maybe switch with a different company. I could have taken other decisions. I could have begun to save money, to help out, to have like a backup plan. And at the time, I didn't have a backup plan, so I was forced to stay with the company. I was forced to do more work. Well, not forced. I mean, I was working out of my free will, but you know what I mean. So that's what I kind of just want to talk about, and share my experience. So hopefully, anybody who's listening to this can kind of have their minds open and be like, just because everything's okay today doesn't mean it's going to be okay tomorrow. And we should always have a backup plan, and we should always have a plan B, and then a plan C, and then a plan D. Because if this doesn't work out, then we have to find a solution to that. And something I learned as well from all that was kind of be proactive and kind of engage and kind of go out there and look for those opportunities instead of trying to stay like hoping something will happen, or instead of hoping that the world would fix itself, instead of becoming like a victim and blaming the system or blaming whoever I'm told to blame. I kind of took it upon myself and said, I'm going to have to make this happen. I'm going to make it happen. So my question to you guys is, are you guys ready for a rainy day? Are you guys prepared for when things don't go the way they're supposed to go? Are you saving up? Do you have a backup plan? Do you have a backup plan to your backup plan? And I'm not talking about living constantly in fear or worrying about the future, because that's not useful either. I'm just thinking about being proactive and being ready to engage the world as it plays out, and not being reactive. Being proactive and taking matters into your own hands. And I think that's an important quality of high performers, and is that they take matters into their hands and they find solutions, and they're always prepared and they're ready to act. Because I want to tell you something: the world's gonna hit you hard, and life's gonna hit you hard. And if it has hit you hard already, you understand what I'm talking about being ready to get up and just fight it out and make things happen. And if it hasn't hit you hard, I promise you, I know it sucks, but it will hit you, and it happens to everybody. It's just part of life. It's up to you if you come out of that a victim or a fighter. It's up to you. And I think one of the best ways to go about it is to always be prepared for a rainy day. Have a plan, whatever it is. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to have a savings amount of money saved up in case you lose your job or this and that. Just always being prepared to be able to act proactively and not react to what's happening, so you can have control of your life. So hopefully this little quick experience and story of mine gets you guys thinking about this, and be prepared, because life's gonna hit you, and it's gonna hit you hard. And the more prepared you are to take that hit, the easier it's gonna be for you to get up and fight back. So that being said, go ahead and follow me on my social media. I'm gonna leave the links on the description. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter. And hopefully you guys like the video. If you like, go ahead and like, subscribe. It would be better if you guys even share that, and share it with people who think might enjoy the value. My whole purpose of this is just to share what I've lived and what I know with people who are willing to take that and hopefully make their lives a little bit easier. Because through all my life, I sometimes have been moments where I would have wished there was somebody out there who kind of let me out a hand and just told me what to do or how to do things or what would be the best way to go. So hopefully my ultimate goal with all this is to just put that information out there, things I know, things I've learned, things I've experienced, and hopefully this makes life a bit easier for anybody who's willing to take it. That being said, that's all for this podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for following and sharing, and for the people who have gotten in contact with me about the first podcast. Thanks so much. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I'm glad you guys liked it. A special shout out to Jacob from Death Pie Society, brand here from my local city, and Emily, a former classmate from NMSU. Thank you for sharing my stuff. Thank you for giving me feedback, and stay cool, guys. Peace out.